Good evening, everybody. This is Unprecedented TV, currently live streaming from only Unprecedented TV's YouTube channel and Delivering Liberty's YouTube channel. Welcome, people. Lisa Sargent, Jacqueline Watts, Fat Lobo, welcome so far. Can't stream onto Twitter for some reason. There's a saying that it's some sort of out of whatever. Something needs to be updated. Don't know. Not interested. Yeah, I'm gonna have on a guest at some point, hopefully, called Norman Richmond to discuss his organization called OfCom Watch. So we'll be speaking to him shortly. But this is Unprecedented TV at the moment, and we're just waiting. I'm going to be doing shows again for UNN, Unity News Network, from tomorrow on Wednesday evenings. So if people fancy that, please do come and watch me over on UNN tomorrow evening from 8 p.m. Again, live streaming from this YouTube channels and Delivering Liberty's YouTube channel, as well as the UNN account. I don't know whether that means also on YouTube as well, UNN's YouTube. But definitely from Rumble and D Live, UNN's Rumble and D Live. So yeah, do watch from there. X is down, is it? What do you mean it's down? Why is it? Why is it down for? What's going on? Let's see if I can get back onto X by working some Majaruni. Let's see. Yep, I'm live on YouTube. Awesome. And let's see. Go live. Nope. Go live. No, Stream Markers lost access to your X account. Don't worry, we've got it covered. Click here to reconnect your destination. Let's see if this is going to work. Yes, maybe Trump's right. Maybe we need more HB1s. We need more Indian people in to sort these problems out for us. Maybe he's right. Maybe we're just all thickos, and we can't sort out our own problems. Which is quite funny, really, because the whole point of why Trump was what he promised his base. What he promised it. Oh, seeing all code in here. Wow. Learn the code, bro. He promised all of his base that he was going to basically stop all the sort of H1B stuff and basically start employing American people rather than overseas people who, it's no disrespect to those people coming overseas. Obviously, they want to leave their country, which probably doesn't have as good conditions as America. But obviously, the only real reason why they're being brought into the US is because they work at a very much lower wage and they will have less rights. And because their visa, essentially, their H1 visa, their employer can simply revoke it if they terminate their contract. So again, it is very much slave labor because the employer, like Elon Musk, like Jeff Bezos, like whomever, they'll simply use the kind of blackmail, the threaten to simply say, well, if you don't do as you're told, then we pay you very minimum wage, then go back to India or go back to Bangladesh or go back to wherever. And that's basically what this is about. So really, it is basically Trump has sold out his base, the everyday people who have voted for him. And it's all for the tech bros. It's all for the other billionaire class who don't have to pay their employers well. So it's a total betrayal. Let's see that. Let's see Trump justify when asked. We're going to go into something. I don't know when our guest is coming on. What's this? Is this the one? Let's see. Digital medical records. No. That's not that. Although that's another funny one. He's brought in basically a digital ID in America. Let's go on to, I think I saw it on UNN's UNN's account. Let's see. I thought I would forward it though. Let's see him justify the H1 visas. I don't think it's that one. I've got to do a search. Hang on. Oh, damage delay. Let's see. HP1. What is going on? You know what, guys? It's going to be one of those days, isn't it, where nothing's going to go right for me today. And let's see. Let's see what Trump is. Trump says immigrants are to make chips and train our people to make chips. Let's see.
That Americans needed to outsource to foreign workers. Could you clarify?
Until they learn that, yeah. Like, for instance, if you're going to be making chips, we don't make chips too much here anymore, but we are going to be in a period of a year. We're going to have a big portion of the chip market, but we have to train our people how to make chips because we didn't do it. We used to do it, and then foolishly we lost that business to Taiwan. Very, very foolishly, because if they had a president that thought like I did, they would not have let that happen. But it's all coming back. I think we're going to have within a few years, we're going, and not because of the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act was a disaster for this country. We gave away billions of dollars to other countries and other locations and companies, and all they did was rob our money. But because of tariffs, the chips are coming back. Chip makers are all coming back. And I think within a very short period of time, we're going to have maybe even the majority of the chip making in the world will be right in the United States, where it should have been all along. But because we had people that didn't believe in tariffs, they believed in them, but they didn't know how to use them, we would have had nobody leaving our country right now. And instead, you have almost 100% of the chips are made in Taiwan. It's so disgraceful. The good news is it's all coming back. Yeah, please.
Mr. President.
So there we go. The chips are going to be made. Yeah. More chatter. Yeah. Pandora Chaser. Welcome. Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, I'm only streaming from 2 channels today. So it won't be too much. But there's some Twitter is apparently down. I don't know. Or there's some sort of weird problem between StreamYards and Twitter. I'm not too sure. So, but basically, I'm kind of just what I'm touching on is that basically we are, what is it now? Just beyond 6 months of the second term of President Trump, and he has very much betrayed his base in terms of that. In terms of, I've just been seeing that. Speaking of Indians, although this is not to dunk on Indian people, of course, is that Kash Patel yesterday, who I personally cannot stand. I think he is a weaselly person. Compromised, and we're going to go into why I think Kash Patel literally told us that he would release the Epstein Black Book on day one. This is what I hate about this guy. And this is what you have to understand as well. This much what is going to happen when or if people keep thinking that it's definitely a shoe-in with Farage, but you never know in politics or what can happen tomorrow. Scandals come out all the time. But if it does seem like that, Farage and Reform will get in, I can guarantee you that nothing is going to get done. I was listening. There was a Reform UK live stream earlier this morning, and Farage and his chairman were speaking of they're going to bring in some 5 points. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even listen to it all because it was just such hopium BS that I just thought I can't listen to this garbage. And basically, one of the points that he was making is that he's going to make sure that they're going to bring down council tax, as in lower the council tax raise, because councils can raise the council tax by 5% each year if they wish. And he says that he's not going to do that. Now, to the average person who doesn't quite understand how councils work, that sounds brilliant. To them, it sounds, oh, great. You know, we just need to elect reformed councillors, and that's what's going to happen. And the reality is that looking at the caliber of these reform candidates, whether councillor level or MP level, and the fact that reform has a very, very strict vetting process, to the point where in the past it has even worked with Hope Not Hate, shamefully, which they seem to be quite proud to tell you. I don't know why, but obviously that's them signaling to the establishment, not the people, that hey, we're willing to work with Hope Not Hate, who are part of the establishment. I've always said Hope Not Hate are essentially the state's unofficial Gestapo. They're willing to work with the state / Hope Not Hate in order to basically produce dummy, do as you're told candidates who will never really say anything controversial, really. They might say something that may sound controversial, but really it's wafer thin, it's weak, it's wet. But that's the best you're going to get. And it's basically to signal to not just the establishment, but also the Dorothys, the Ethels, the boomer kind of people who think that oh, Farage's going to save us. Oh yes, God bless the king, and all of this sort of stuff. And it's nothing's going to change. They're saying that they're going to lower the council tax, but because of the caliber of candidates that they're producing, that a lot of them are just, I'm not going to lie, they're as thick as poo, right? Those chief executives, which are, I don't know if you saw the other day, are chief executives of councils now. Let's see. Chief executives now are, as in the unelected bureaucrats, the forever civil servants of councils who have been there probably 10, 20, 30 years and have seen many councillors come and go of all different sorts of parties, no matter what party's in charge, whether it's a Labour-controlled council, whether it's a Conservative-controlled council, whether it's a UKIP-controlled council back in the day, even a BNP one like Barker and Dagenham back in the day. These are the people who will forever be there, the Sir Humphrey Applebys of the local councils. These chief executives, and this is how you know the civil service truly do run this country, or at least are really the main people who are the controllers of the mechanism of the machine, the servants of the machine to the higher establishment, is that a typical chief executive now is getting £1 million a year. Compare that to the elected prime minister, who is making only 10% of that figure, i.e. about over 100,000 grand. And this is how you know it's actually the unelected people that are running. And once those brand new, fresh reform candidates who don't know even where even the toilets will be in the building of the council building, those chiefs and other civil servants are going to run rings around them, and they're going to convince the councillors, the elected councillors, who again are just dummies and they don't know what they're doing. They're going to convince them to basically raise the council tax, and they're going to say, hey, we can bring in more money for the area. If only we can just, raise the threshold a bit, it'll be good in the long run. In the long run, we'll actually save money. You just know what they're going to say, these chief executives. You know what they're going to say. Oh, we'll just raise it a little bit. They probably don't want to even raise it 5%. They probably have this figure in their head where they only want to raise it 2%, but instead it's going up and up and up. It's always going up, right? But they'll say to the council, we've got to raise it 5%. but in their mind, it's like doing a car deal. But in their mind, they already have settled for 2%, and really it's 2% that they want, or 2.5%. And they will convince the councillor that they have done the chief executive over. Okay, you've beat me, councillor. I won't raise it, but we shouldn't raise it by 5%. We'll just raise it by 3%. But that was always what the chief executive wanted. And that's basically what is going to happen. That is essentially what is going to happen, right? They're going to trick the new, very dim, very screened new councillors, as in they're going through the vetting process. Let's see, chief, let's put down chief executives of the UK councils. Let's see what will come up. Let's see. Let's see what's been in the news about it. Let's see, what have they got? Let's put this one day old. This is in Ayrshire, is it? In Scotland, I believe, West Scotland. Chief Executive Ayrshire, 3 local authorities are set to salary increases of more than £14,000 in 2026. East Chasers Eddie Fraser will see the biggest rise across the region, with his annual income due to be boosted by 18,400. That will take his salary from 166,582 to 185,044 quid in November 2026. Meanwhile, some of them are getting almost 190,000. Keep in mind, this is already more. I've seen higher, a lot higher. Already these salaries are higher than the Prime Minister, who I believe only gets about 120,000. Again, this is the Prime Minister, right? Keep it in mind, this is a person who's in charge, supposedly in charge of the entire United Kingdom, not a little rinky-dinky little council somewhere, right? In contrast, the upcoming wage pay, the chief executive of Glasgow City Council is in line to receive a salary of £230,000, whilst the City of Edinburgh Council's most senior paid officer will get £225,000. So keeping in mind, the councillors, a lot of them don't really get paid at all, really. A lot of them just simply get some kind of, like an allowance, which is probably no more than really 20 grand, if even that, maybe, probably even less than that. Following a new review, the average raise across Scotland will be almost 20 grand. So their pay is more than what elected councillors, who have to go through, obviously, going through a campaign of being elected. They have to do most of the work, really, do most of the hard work. They have to scrutinize. They have to be questioned by the people. They get a lot of complaints by the people. And these individuals here, they're people in the background. They're in the shadows. They don't get any flack. And they're getting more money than the Prime Minister for running a little borough, a little council building, essentially. I remember we went to, I don't know if Greg Romford's at the chat. I remember a couple of years ago, went to, was it Havia? What's Romford and Havia Council? And it was due to the ULEZ being expanded to Romford. And despite a very large protest outside that small council building, I remember everyone just barged in. They just demanded to be in. Again, this is what I'm talking about. Look, they have an agenda. These unelected people, they have an agenda. They don't care about. They're not scrutinized. They don't have routine elections where at least they can be possibly voted out. There's none of that. They don't care. They're not held by anything, right? So they'll just put something in. They'll convince the dumbass councillors that this is a great idea, and then that's the end of it. And I remember going into the building, and there was a guy in a very nice suit, probably the best dressed guy there, and it was on my live stream, and it said he was said that, look, I'm not a councillor, I'm just a chief executive. And I said, well, that's the guy who runs the place then. That's the guy who actually runs the place. Isn't like this is what I'm talking about. MPs, councillors, all of these elected positions, that is the illusion of democracy, where it's to show the plebs, it's to show what they consider the plebs, the people that, oh, look, we'll trick these idiots, these morons, to think that they actually have some power by going into a polling station every 4 years and putting a little X in a box, and we'll just pretend that they have some power. You know, it's like the equivalent of like a toddler comes up to you with like some scribbles that they've done, and then you as the parent go, wow, you've done a work of art. I'm going to stick that on the fridge because you're so clever and you're so good. It's essentially that. It's a total embarrassment, the whole democratic system. That's why that's why I just say to people, don't vote. There's no point in doing it. It is pointless, right? And this is where I then disagree. It's funny. There was with people like Nick Fuentes, for example, is because ultimately, and it's quite funny, in the UNN chat last night, I just happened to see someone atted me, and I just happened to be on my phone at the time, and I saw someone had atted me, and it was a Nick Fuentes cultist fanboy cuck, basically, who again the Fuentes people, like the sort of MAGA people, the QAnon people, they're total cultist cucks, basically, and will defend anything that their dear leader says or does. And he was claiming that I was a hypocrite in some way, because simply what I did was, what I think I understood was that I had shared on my Telegram channel a recent Nick Fuentes video, even though I Fuentes is being brought in from the cold, essentially, because obviously the flack of the great noticing of like the Israel lobby, for example, is getting too well noticed. I think the real reason, because at the end of the day, they can just suppress, they can just do to Nick Fuentes like they did with the BNP, like they did with any kind of real controversial people that the state found difficult to deal with. They will just suppress them. They'll even just kill them if they have to, right? But the fact that he has been let in from the cold, and especially go on to Tucker Carlson, who I sincerely do believe is a CIA asset. His dad was CIA. His son is working with a CIA asset, i.e. Peter Thiel. I do believe that Tucker Carlson is essentially Operation Mockingbird 2.0, because instead of the traditional media, the mainstream media, which was Mark 1 of Operation Mockingbird, Mark 2 is simply the continuation, but now in the alternative media sphere, because the alternative media is taking over the mainstream media. It's bigger than the mainstream media. Look at the number one podcast in the world. It was or is Joe Rogan, and Tucker Carlson and people like Candace Owens and all of that are in alternative media, and they are the biggest viewers, really, more so than any of the traditional media like CNN or Fox News or anything like that. I mean, only boomers really watch those two programs anymore, those two news organizations. But I don't trust Candace. I don't trust Tucker. I don't trust Ben Shapiro, these biggest people. I think that they're all some kind of intelligence assets. And I think that Nick Fuentes is allowed to exist on the Rumble platform because Rumble was created as a, how can I say it, an Operation Trust kind of platform, where, as Lenin said, what did he say, to control the opposition will simply control it ourselves, or simply create it ourselves. And that is what Rumble is. It is believed to be an alternative for truthers. But you look at the people who invested into Rumble. It's JD Vance, it's Peter Thiel, it's Dan Bongino, it's all the kind of establishment or not so obvious establishment people who invested money into it. So if they wanted to, they could just simply kick Nick Fuentes off. But they don't, because Nick Fuentes' solutions ultimately is believing in the system still. In the sense that I believe that there are some people out there, especially it's very boomer minded, that there's nothing wrong with the system. The system is still on our side. The police are on our side. Whatever the vote. There's nothing wrong with the system, the voting system. It's just the people. It's just the people that are the problem. Whereas I believe the truth is, and I think anyone with a functioning brain understands, that it's the system itself that is broken, and it doesn't matter who goes who, no matter how good of a person they are. Look at Thomas Massey, for example. He's probably the only decent politician in the Western world that I can think of, top of my head, like in an elected position, I mean, right? He can't get anything done. Ron Paul famously had this same problem, couldn't get anything done, ran for president, totally sticks, totally done over. It just doesn't matter. The system is totally against the people. But Nick Fuentes' solution is, we just have to get into the system. We just have to get that. We just have to infiltrate. We just have to take over. Now, people might say, but David Clues' solution is infiltrate, reform. David Clues is under no delusion that even if we got 30 to 40, we infiltrated reform and managed to get 40 MPs, let's say, into the Houses of Commons, it doesn't matter. David Clues has said it doesn't matter, because yes, we'll have some voices in there that might cause a bit of havoc, but in terms of practicality of getting things done, nothing will get done. And it's only by going through that infiltration, and then for people to have that penny dropped moment and then realize that, it really doesn't matter. Because a lot of people, they survive on hopium, that they're just hoping that Farage and the infiltrated reform MPs are going to do something. They ain't going to do nothing, because they have thousands upon thousands of these unelected civil servants that are totally against them and will perform skullduggery tactics of blackmail, of everything. Remember Matt Hancock? And they got all that. They sat on that video footage of him cheating on his wife with that secretary for ages. And then when Hancock didn't do what he was whatever he was meant to be doing, they released it. They have all of the cameras set up. It's only a matter of time before you F up, basically. And then they will release that. So David Clues, unlike Nick Fuentes, is under no delusion, because Nick Fuentes is deluded if he thinks that, we just got to get the Groypers to infiltrate the American system and then everything's going to be A-OK. BS. And that's why they've let him in from the cold, because he is a palatable rebel. He is even Nick Fuentes says he's not even that radical. He's not. He really isn't. You actually listen. The only thing that people might consider Nick Fuentes a radical is because he says some edgy stuff occasionally. That's it. But he's just saying nonsense. He's just saying words. He's just being edgy. Being edgy is not being a radical. And that's why he comes off kind of immature and twerpy and all of that. However, he does say things that I do agree with, and that's why I shared this post. But the low IQ Nick Fuentes cuck cultist guy doesn't understand this. And he gets think, you're a hypocrite. You're now supporting Nick Fuentes, even though you said, no, I stand by everything I said. That the original post that I put was that people have noticed ever since Nick has been allowed into the establishment club, essentially, not in the high tier club, but in the sort of low tier economy club of the establishment, the second class club of the establishment, where think of it like Think of it like the Titanic almost, where they had first class, second class, and third class. like Fuentes is down in the bowels of the ship dancing with all the Irish. He's down there, right? He's down doing some jigs down there, listening to some fiddle music, right? That's where Fuentes is, in the establishment club, right? He isn't up there with the proper elites, right? But they've let him in because they've realized that he's not even that radical, that he's still sending a message to young people that, hey, all you got to do is join government agencies and infiltrate and keep your mouth shut. And then eventually, when we infiltrate successfully, we'll turn this ship around. We'll turn the Titanic around before it hits the iceberg, and we'll make sure that it gets to its destination and to America First Land. And it's delusional. Again, different from David Clue. Same tactics of infiltration, but David doesn't believe that anything's going to happen. The only thing that's going to be achieved from it is that there will be high entertainment of that. You'll get some people in there, perhaps like 20 to 40 people that might say some funny, spicy things. But ultimately, once the Hopium people of the dissident movement realize that it really doesn't matter, and we've got to stop signing petitions, we have to stop putting an X in a box, and we've got to stop paying our taxes and become totally ungovernable. That is the only solution. But a lot of people, obviously, who are very much brainwashed of decades and decades of, hey, you got to pay your taxes. Hey, your grandfather went and died in the bankers' war to basically put an X in a box. Or what's the other one? Oh, Anthony Webber's going to come along and say, oh, sign a petition because the government really does listen to you. We've got to get out of that mindset and then realize that, hey, we've got to become totally uncooperative to the state. There is the social contract that doesn't exist is totally void. If a contract is void between two parties, then you don't have to pay anything. It's like it's like anything. You and another party, you and another individual have a contract that says that I will pay you this money if you deliver this, that, and that service or product, whatever it is. If the other party doesn't deliver on the service to a satisfactory standard or the product, then the contract becomes void and you don't have to pay. That is any typical contract. It will have terms and conditions. If the terms and conditions are breached, the contract becomes void. So the social contract, which again doesn't exist, but let's just live in the imaginary world that it does. It doesn't matter. It's void. It's been broken. So that's my stance on Nick Fuentes. I don't think he's the solution. I think essentially he is a useful pawn. I won't say useful idiot. I'll be nice and say useful pawn. And he is being used by the establishment that will eventually spit him out. And he might be, he says that he's on his generational run or push. But that, like anything that goes up must come down. And I foresee that Fuentes is going to go away of I'm trying to think of Ben Shapiro now, really, who's I saw a funny thing. We saw about Ben Shapiro share the Nick Fuentes video. I saw there's been, you know what? There's been these hilarious Disney Pixar AI trailers being made, and some of them are so hilarious. This one's all right, but it's very, very edgy, spicy kind of racial kind of jokes and everything, and they are just generally hilarious. And I've been just laughing my head off at them. I've said here, the Daily Wire continues to lose views, subscribers, and money in wreck of the Great Noticing. This again, look. I do think that what Nick Fuentes is doing right now is ultimately good, in the sense that it's waking people up to, to truly the power brokers of the West, i.e., Zionist Israelis, and or just Zionists in general. They don't have to be Jewish or Israeli, but people like the Ted Cruz's of the world, Gavin McGinnis's, the Tommy Robinsons, the Zionists. They're starting to notice it. But what I think is going on is that there is a greater agenda at play where the establishment, because like anything, what happens is that there is a genuine movement that first begins. Think of MAGA, genuine spirit of the people that genuinely want to, they want to see good for their country. It's just like you can also compare this to Brexit. I'm trying to think of others, but just stick with MAGA, for example, is that it begins first, genuine rebellious spirit that is going on. And then what happens is slowly, I think you could say this also happened with the freedom community as well over the last 5 years, is that it started off generally with great energy, great creative juices, in the sense that, I watched David's shows yesterday. He had a guest on. They were talking about, the music, the artistry, everything, the spirit. It was all raw. It made people more creative because it was genuine. It was true. It was raw. And that's what the establishment feared. And the same was done with MAGA. The same was done with Brexit. The same was done with also like the Ron Paul movement back in the day. And these things, as in the Tea Party stuff, and all of these things were real. But what happened is that slowly what the establishment did, they have to do their own form of infiltration, similar to like David's idea of the reform way. They do their version of infiltration, and they slowly infect the movement. Let's just say with MAGA, and then eventually look at MAGA now. Look at MAGA now, right? It's the people who are taking over MAGA are Ben Shapiro, are Mark Levin, are Ted Cruz, are Dan Crenshaw, all of these people who are just Zogbot Zionists, and now they're telling you what MAGA means. And MAGA has become MIGA, as in Make Israel Great Again. And it's just look at Brexit, totally destroyed. And that I can see that happening with Nick Ferentz's America First movement, is that eventually, unfortunately, it will probably be infected, because I think that the establishment are essentially courting Nick Ferentz at the moment. And unfortunately, this is human nature. This is where the quote, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And looking at the sort of individual that Nick Ferentz is that he is a guy with a lot of ego. He has a lot of character flaws, which, we all do. But he is a person I think likes to have his ego massaged. And I noticed that when he goes on the people's shows, such as Alex Jones, such as Tucker Carlson, that he can be bitching and whining about these people for weeks, calling them all sorts of things, that they're shills, that they're state security assets, whatever, like he's done with Tucker and all that. And then as soon as he gets on their show, and then they have a somewhat kind of boring kind of interview, especially the Tucker Carlson one, the next day, Nick will do his show and say, "Oh, he's a great guy. Actually, he's all right, man. Yeah, he's pretty cool," because he's had his ego massaged. And he may not know it. This may be a subconscious thing where Nick may not even be aware of what he's doing. I mean, the fact that his own supporters on his own Telegram channel, you're keeping in mind, Telegram is where the real dissidents are, let's be honest. Like, a lot of people don't know about Telegram, the normies anyway. The fact that his own Telegram channel have noticed, his own followers have noticed that his rhetoric has changed slightly, and they're even downvoting. He's getting more downvotes than ever. He's being ratioed by his own followers not on Twitter, where everyone's on Twitter, but on the obscure Telegram, where his hardcore supporters are, and a lot of his viewers are downvoting him. it's because they've noticed that he has changed his rhetoric on things. He bitches for weeks and weeks about people, goes on their show. Actually, goes up next day. Actually, he's all right. He's actually a good friend of mine now. So what the establishment have noticed that they've essentially built a psychological profile on this guy, and they've gone, hey, if we basically, fluff this guy, right? We just fluff this guy. We're going to let him into our little club, third class though, on the Titanic, not on top with Billy Zane and Kate Winslet, who's not until before she's down there. We're going to no chandeliers, no fun. No, we're going to let him on with all the Irish down, playing the fiddle music down in the basement of the bowels of the Titanic. Right, we'll let him in that sort of third class, and we're going to basically slowly infiltrate and take over America first. And then after we're done, we're just going to chew Nick Fuentes up and just spit him out, and that's going to be the end of it. That's going to be the end of it. But at the time being, he is waking people up to the great notes. But what the establishment do, they will, like with anything, like I noticed with Tommy Robinson, because Tommy Robinson came along after Nick Griffin. After Nick Griffin was the first person to talk about the Islamic grooming gangs. You notice two people appeared when the BNP was was on its height or on its decline. Two people appeared on the scene. Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, because he was still called himself Stephen Yaxley-Lennon. Look at the old Newsnight interviews on BBC Two, where he was allowed on as Stephen Yaxley-Lennon before Tommy Robinson, and Nigel Farage. And what they done is that they basically split the BNP, I think, into two sorts of things. Whereas Farage will take over the political side of it, and Tommy will take over the social side of it, if you get what I mean, the non-political side of it. So, and it was just split in two. And then Tommy, yes, he took on board the Islamic rape gang stuff. But what he did was, unlike Griffin, was that Griffin would talk about also the Zionist lobby. Bankers, he would talk about the power of Israel, the influence and all of that, as well as the Islamic rape gangs. But then when Tommy took over, all of that was then left out, and it became a kosher-friendly, kosher-approved message. Same with Nigel Farage. The party was taken up, that essentially a new party to replace BNP was created. There's a UKIP, or at least taken over. And no longer did it mention those other things. It started talking about just simply, the kosher approved stuff. And that's it. And that's what they do. They basically, they take over a movement and then they direct it into a direction that is where the establishment doesn't want you to go. And that's essentially what happened. So this is what I see with Fuentes, is that they let him in from the cold. Eventually his rhetoric, his arguments will be taken over by other people. And you see this with Tucker Carlson right now. Since Tucker had Fuentes on, Nick Fuentes is starting to, what I've noticed, and I could be wrong, but I've seen that Nick Fuentes is starting to decline, whereas Tucker essentially, it's almost as if Nick went on that show, on Tucker Carlson's show, and simply, he may as well have just physically given Tucker a baton to say, hey, now you talk about the stuff I've been talking about. Because all of the mainstream media, even the alternative media, who are sometimes dumb enough to just do as the mainstream media does as well, all they're talking about is Tucker Carlson now, who for years never spoke about this stuff. Even when he had Thomas Massey on a couple of months ago, about a year ago, and then Thomas Massey said, hey, AIPAC, as in the American Israel Political Action Committee, AIPAC has massive control in Congress of both Republicans and Democrats. And then Tucker Carlson went, what's AIPAC? What's AIPAC? I've never heard of AIPAC. Even though Tucker Carlson has been the political correspondent of Fox News for at least 20 years. And you're telling me that he's never heard of AIPAC. I mean, either he's just incredibly bad at his job or he's a liar. And I think it's the latter. But to not know what AIPAC is, which is a massive influential political force in American politics, to not know that is to me just unbelievable, as in he's lying. So now Tucker is basically being molded into the kosher friendly, well, not kosher friendly, but the establishment approved, because they have to talk about this now because it is out there in the public. It's over on the internet. They've even had to try and buy TikTok over it. You know, Larry Ellison has now bought TikTok. Larry Ellison's son, David Ellison, has bought most of the mainstream media in America now as well. And it's containment. They're trying to stop this message from going out. So they're trying to turn basically, okay, don't listen to Nick Fuentes anymore. Listen to Tucker. Tucker is the establishment approved dissident, even though Tucker has been part of that mainstream establishment for, well, there's never been a time where he's not been in the establishment. His father, again, Robert Carlson, was it Robert Carlson? Was also in the mainstream media, CIA operative. And Tucker's now, people see him as a rebel, as an anti-establishment, counter-establishment figure. He's always been in the establishment. Yes, he's got a YouTube channel, but YouTube is mainstream, really. I know I'm broadcasting from YouTube, but I'm in no delusion to think that YouTube is somehow like, oh, is YouTube alternative now? I mean, it's not, is it? I mean, YouTube is the media, isn't it? It's taken over as the media. It's if anything, the mainstream, the thing we call the mainstream media is actually the alternative media now, really, let's be honest. And now the biggest shows in America are Shapiro's, are Candace Owens, is Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan. I know that's not news, but again, it's the biggest podcast in the world. It was first a YouTube channel before it went on Spotify. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Anyway, let's just put this on. I've been rambling so much. This I see. This is what's happening now with Ben Shapiro. So the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's news outlet, it's continuing to basically, it's in the death spiral, right? And it's totally just spiraling out of control, right? And it's losing viewers. I think I heard something like it loses 20,000 views or subscribers a week. I think it did have like at least 1 million subscribers at one point, its YouTube channel. Anyway, let's just watch this for a second.
Welcome back to Shapiro Show
From Pixar Animation Studios
Wait, why is the number going down?
comes a story about one guy
Sweetheart, maybe the world don't hate you.
Maybe they just need a reason to like you again.
trying everything
Please like and subscribe. Resubscribe, pretty please.
Cringe, dude.
to win everybody back.
One subscriber at a time.
Yeah, it's he's losing it all the time. So I see a guest is there, a guest, which is really funny because I was speaking to this guest only a few days ago. I'm gonna bring him in shortly. Let me just round off my point. I'll bring him in. So what I'm saying about Fuentes is that, where is it? Is that I think he's been brought in from the cold. I think that the establishment are going to use him. He's a useful pawn at the moment. But I did share something which, again, I thought, well, yeah, it is true what he's saying. It's not solution stuff. He's a great guy. I say Fuentes is a great talker. He's a great communicator. He knows how to. He has a natural gifted ability where he knows what will resonate with the people. And all it was simply was, because obviously I want to talk about the Epstein files as well later on in the show, is that it seems as though, again, what I'm seeing online is actually quite incredible, is that what I'm seeing is that you have the Trump propaganda train, which is, what am I doing? What's going on? Oh, did I share the wrong link? Oh, what bell end I am. Although that's a funny one as well. Let's see, So the Trump propaganda train is telling you that, oh, you know, I saw the not Sean Hannity, what's the other guy called, whatever his name is, young guy, Jesse Waters, is it, of Fox News, is that, they're trying to say, oh, you know, like they let Epstein out and the Epstein files have been released, and actually it says, you know, Epstein hates Trump, you know, and all of this, but they're the cherry picked bits that are from all of the massive leak that there's been. And what they're showing you that bit, but then what they're not showing you is that supposedly is that in 2017, whilst Trump was in the White House, he apparently, I believe he did stay at the White House for Thanksgiving. He didn't go and spend time with the family or anything like that. Wherever the place he lives in, and all that. And he instead elected to stay in the White House for his first Thanksgiving as president in 2017. And apparently, one of the guests at the Thanksgiving dinner in the White House was Jeffrey Epstein, after he had already been prosecuted as a sex trafficker, which would therefore explain why Trump, and there's probably other things as well, but this is definitely one of them, is that why Trump pretended, because he has lied, he has said that there's nothing more to release and that's it, and that's the end of it. But there is. So at bare minimum, Trump has lied. At bare minimum, he has lied to his following. A following that he promised would release all of this stuff eventually when he became president and all of that. That this guy was, because keep it in mind, you know, like this was stuff being said even before it was his second run, wasn't it? Before it was the campaign for his second run that he said he would release all this stuff. Did he say it in 2015? People remind me in the chat. Did he say it in 2015 as well? Were they talking about the Epstein files in 2015? I can't remember now. I get all confused with all the chaos. But apparently he had this guy as a guest in the White House. So this is what Fuentes said, and this is why I shared it. Again, I don't think Fuentes is a solution, but he does say correct stuff every now and then.
Are you telling me that Donald Trump had Thanksgiving dinner with Jeffrey Epstein when he was the president? Are you kidding me? That is what is in the files, the 20,000 emails that were released yesterday. We don't even have all of them. And this Department of Justice said the files didn't exist. And they knew that this was in them? Really? How do you expect anybody to ever trust the Trump government ever again? You think that you had the right to bury this? Wouldn't that be pretty relevant if Donald Trump, as the newly elected president, sat down for Thanksgiving, his first one in office with Jeffrey Epstein, after his labor secretary, Alex Acosta, recently appointed, was the one that gave Epstein the sweetheart deal 10 years prior? Are you telling me that Donald...
Well, there was a bit of a rave going on as well. I forgot about that bit. Anyway, look, I'm going to stop rambling for a second. I do want to talk about Kash Patel. That is someone I've got a proper hate thing for Kash Patel. I cannot stand Kash Patel. But anyway, in between all of that, I'm going to get our guest on because he's been patiently waiting in the background here. So I'm going to add him right now to the show. So welcome to the show, Graham Moore. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's a big surprise. I'm expecting another guest, another guy who's meant to come on, but instead, I'm actually glad that is you because I actually know who you are, Graham. And we were talking only the other day via messages. So what brings you to unprecedented TV?
When did I? Sorry.
What brings you here on the show?
How did I get your link?
What's happened? Yeah, I don't know what's happened.
Right. So a very good friend of mine, who you know quite well, which is Charlotte Emma, sent me your link and said that Sean's live. Go and jump on with Sean. So I said, all right, then I will, and that was it. So I clicked on your link and
that
jumped
sounds just
on.
like her. It was almost as if she was in the room with us there when you did her voice there. He's it. Just get on the show.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no,
sorry.
quite funny.
Yeah. So Graham, funnily enough, so we were chatting only the other day. So Charlotte must have somehow must have got some kind of psychic sense that we've been chatting or something, because I haven't said anything to her, to my knowledge anyway. No, I haven't. No. So we were chatting the other day. So it was regarding a mutual, well, at least a friend of mine. I don't know if he's a friend of yours. That he was having some legal issue. I won't go into it. And obviously, I know you. You are a paralegal, aren't you? You've got many hats that you wear, but that is one of them. You are a paralegal.
I am a registered paralegal, which means a registered paralegal means you're not qualified in their way. In other words, you're not part of their club, but you still show respect to the court. That's a crucial element.
Yeah, I prefer paralegals personally to actual solicitors. If I have to say, I would take that obviously. And you can sit as a Mackenzie friend, then, can't you, as well, if you wanted to? Is that correct?
You've got certain restrictions. You can sit as a Mackenzie friend. You can advise people. You can help them with their paperwork. So you can help control the presentation of the case if you want to get the case over properly, and you can tell the person, don't say, some people come out with the weirdest things in court. You can say, don't say that, because the judge is just going to shut you down and shut your case down.
Graham, I've been to so many court cases, right? Not my own, but in support of others, and a lot of them have, I think, been a bit hoodwinked, right, into adopting what I think is, obviously we've all heard of common law, something that's been around since for who knows how long. It's so old. But then there's this other thing going around that I think is masquerading as what people would call common law, and basically I think it's a load of nonsense, if I'm honest with you. And I've seen people really adopt this modern, I'm going to call it modern common law, this modern common law take on it, and they've made complete tits of themselves in the courts, and they've come out with worse sentences and far more heftier fines because they have, they have I think been led down this path where, and there's a particular guy, I don't want to name him to save embarrassment to him, but there's a guy who continues to do this, but he's of the mindset that I'm winning, though. In the long term, I'm winning. I'm going to win in the long term, even though he's lost like 10, 20 cases consecutively. But he's still in this mindset that, oh, no, well, I'm going to, eventually I'm going to win. And he's lost everything. And I've got to a point now where I just kind of ignore him now, if I'm honest with you, because he wants people to go and support him. And it's like, I'm sorry, man, but I'm not going to this anymore because you're not showing me any, that you don't seem to learn from your losses. You know what I mean? It just seems to be the same thing over and over again. But sorry. Anyway, go on, Graham.
No. So let me just mute that tab in the background. What you've just so in a one-liner, I call them people a psyop. They are a psyop against the people. They are in effect communists and doing exactly what the communists want them to do. And just like communism, every time it fails, the communists say, "Yeah, but you didn't do it right."
Yeah, that's actually a very good analogy. Yeah,
that's exactly what they're doing, and they're getting people into a lot of trouble on the way. And I don't know who that person is you're talking about, but I have seen many of these people, instead of them standing up and doing it themselves and presenting cases and going through the process, they always get someone else to do it, and it's the other person that suffers, not them. Which again, if you look at, I mean, we've just had in an election in Runcorn and Helsby, which I'll be announcing the judgment tonight on my show, and the costs order. What I will say is so myself as a registered paralegal and someone who understands the law and the law of elections, etc., we've just gone head to head with King's Counsel, barrister, an army of barristers, King's Counsel, 2 King's Counsels originally, an army of solicitors, and won every point, right? Even to the point that the appellant court, the second highest court in the country, completely agreed with me, right? And threw out their case against what they was trying to strike out our hearing. And the appellant court. So again, all I'm trying to say is what I do is different to what these other people are doing. That doesn't mean you will win every case, right? So the 3 elements up until our trial, we had an election petition trial. I'm not sure if you know too much about it, but basically I got 50 votes when I stood in Tooting by-election when Sadiq Khan stood down and became the mayor. I got exactly 50 votes in that election. And then 9 years later in Runcorn and Helsby, I got exactly 50 votes again. That is the first time in electoral history that's ever happened, that a single candidate gets the exact amount of votes in 2 separate elections. Don't forget, this is for Parliament, almost as if it was predetermined. In other words, the count is a fraud. And that is what we just recently put in a 3-day petition trial, which was held at Chester on the 3rd, 4th and 5th of November. So today I've just been handed down the judgment, and I'll be talking about that tonight on my show and explaining to people exactly what's going on and obviously the cost order. But just to let you know, Sean, and your audience, the 2 of the original judges from the first part of the case, they got a cost order from the Royal Mail, for example, and they described it as grossly disproportionate. That's a judge's terminology for fraudulent. It was so massively out of silk, out of kilter, that they reduced it from £80,000 to £12,500, right? Which I've never known them to do before. Don't forget, we're now talking about high court judges at the highest level in the country talking about this. So this case was never about, and by the way, all the judges have accepted this, it was misreported by the mainstream media, and I may say some people on the alternative media have just ignored it when it's a crucial case. But the basis of it is that the count is crooked itself. It's not just about postal voting. That's part of the fraud, but it's the fraud itself that happens in the middle of a count. And I'll give you one indication. This was actually proven in Doncaster in 2009. And it's actually a group of people I do not align with, which was the British National Party. They had 5,000 of their votes stolen and put into the Labour pile to try and stop the English Democrats winning the mayor election of Doncaster. And the returning officer in that case called for a complete independent individual ballot recount. And they found these 5,000 votes that had been stolen from the BNP. And what they did was they took the votes, and at the top of a bundle, they put a Labour ballot, and at the bottom, they put a Labour ballot. And then all of the ones in between were BNPs. And then they counted the whole ballot as Labour. Right? That's how crooked this system is. And the only way you can overwhelm it is to do what Trump did, which was to tell the people to come out and vote en masse. If you don't vote, you're complicit in a communist takeover of this country. And that's what's being advised by these people. You should never be despondent. If it's the way to take it back, the only other way of there's an old saying: you can vote your way in or cheat your way into a communist structured nation, but you'd have to shoot your way out. And unfortunately, I am now seeing that is coming to a very close conclusion.
In the I was reading the article here from the Standard a couple of weeks ago when you were in court. So you described, you said Mr. Moore added Marxism comes into it, and then you also said later that Mr. Burnham is a Fabian, a reference to a socialist organisation, the Fabian Society. In other words, a Marxist. You said. What was the reaction in the court? Did they know what you were talking about?
Oh, so, Sean, I was asked a question, and it was put to me by Sarah Pouchin's counsel that I had mentioned the Fabian Society and Marxism and the fact that they cheat in elections. And you must all remember that Stalin himself had basically been quoted to say, it's not the amount of votes that you get in an election that are important. It's who counts the votes, right? So it is the ethos of Fabians and Marxists to cheat in elections. That's basically what they do. So just to get to your point, did they understand? There were 65 members of the public in the gallery and one person in the media gallery who were misreporting from Associated Press on what was actually going on. But when I finished and explained that the last time we had a Fabian government as we have today, we went to war in Iraq on a lie. And it was Tony Blair who's the Fabian, right? And his entire cabinet, bar one, which I believe Claire Short was not a Fabian, but everyone else was. Clement Attlee, for example, Fabian and a communist, going back to, slight post-war. And I explained that in my answer. And when I stopped giving my answer, there was a complete and utter applause come from the public gallery because I just told it as it was. So the judge said to me, this is not a place to be on your soapbox. And the other judge said, but we understand the passion from the people listening to this and we understand the public interest. Bearing in mind, it was a packed court. It was court number 1, Crown Court, Chester, etc. So what I basically did was explained that Fabianism and Marxism is not a conspiracy. I said, if you go onto Twitter, the Fabian Society on Twitter have put all their posts on there congratulating the 141 Fabians that were elected to Parliament. And then they went through the entire cabinet that were Fabians. That's not a conspiracy theorist. What it proved to me, to be fair, and the comments I got from Sarah Pouchin's counsel, a barrister, who, by the way, has been retained by Nigel Farage via UKIP all the way through the Brexit Party and now with Reform, it basically shows that Reform UK are controlled opposition. Because they should never have even attempted to strike out this petition, because what I was saying, it wasn't Sarah Pouchin that cheated. It was a Labour Party that cheated. And the reason why they didn't call for a petition and a full independent ballot recount at the Royal Courts of Justice, because that's where they would have held the recount, the reason why they didn't do that, the Labour Party, was because it would have shown that they were the ones cheating. They just didn't cheat enough. In other words, the vote was so overwhelmingly for Reform, but I do 100% believe that Reform UK are controlled opposition without any doubts whatsoever.
Oh yeah, well I was just saying it before you came onto the show there that they are. Well, Farage, I mean, Farage appeared really after Nick Griffin because he came onto the scene after, because obviously I think that the BNP was starting to become a legitimate challenge to the powers that be, or the powers that shouldn't be, and they needed to create. So I think they essentially created two figures, i.e., Farage and Tommy Robinson, and then Nigel took over the political aspect of the BNP, and Tommy took over the kind of social, Islamic rape gang sort of part of it, and they sort of split it into two basically. And I think that's essentially what happened, and then obviously after that, UKIP politically destroyed the BNP, and Farage often says that, it was because of me that the BNP was destroyed, and then Tommy took over the conversation about the Islamic rape gangs, essentially. And then even to this day, people go, "Well, Tommy was the one who first spoke about." Well, no, he wasn't.
He wasn't. Nick Griffin was. So just to make sure, there's a couple of points I want to make about what you just said. I don't disagree with what you're saying. In other words, it's all controlled, right? But one of the major reasons why Nigel Farage was brought into UKIP and UKIP was created was not the BNP. It was actually one of the strongest growing political organisations at the time, which was the English Democrats, right? They had 30,000 members and they was winning elections, and they had to take out because it was a threat to the political union, right? So if you speak to the Labour Party, if you speak to the BNP, if you speak to any of them people, they all want to keep this union, right? The political union is the threat to the people directly, and the independent nations, meaning England, Scotland. I mean, Wales is part of England because of the common law, but I've got no objections to Wales being independent, and Northern Ireland. But if you read the law books, you understand. But when you speak to them people, whether it be Robin Tilbrook from the English Democrats, whether it be all these different people, they will tell you that Nigel Farage was brought in to destroy the independence movement, especially of England, right? UKIP was all about the union. BNP was all about the union. And as long as you had them two groups fighting each other, you still had the union that was being fought for. If either side won, you still had the union. Whereas the English Democrats were completely about English independence. And if you go back through history, O.V. Dicey wrote a fantastic book about the union. And one of the things I learned from that was 7 years after the union was enacted in 1707 in its entirety, 7 years after that, it was put to Parliament to annul the union, right? It was actually taken as a vote. People were not happy. The Scots sent a 5,000-man army into England, not to attack the English, but towards that British Parliament to say, we don't want it. And no one's taught that anymore, right? So prior to the union, we had what's known as a common law union. In other words, everyone shared the same king, everyone shared the same rights. It wasn't an issue. But there's a lot more to this than what people. I mean, you've just had an article that I watched briefly where you showed, was it Firenze's? What's the guy's name? The one who. What was his name? You're on mute, I think, unless it's me.
Sorry, apologies. Yeah, I was just cutting. Yeah, Nick Fuentes or Fuentes. I can't remember one of the two.
So I've got a different opinion. I haven't got a problem with him, by the way. And I've just seen a fantastic clip of Tucker Carlson, literally on Twitter, talking about what's going on now and the fact that this is a communist takeover. I am against what Israel have done, right? So if you imagine I'm one of them people, and then people call you an anti-Semite, and I say, listen, I'm not an anti-Semite. It's not this. I am against organised political corruption. It doesn't matter who it is, but there is a Jewish mafia, right? And no one's allowed to talk about it. In fact, in some places in the world, if you even fractionally go towards that, they'll send you to prison. Shows how powerful.
It's funny because what's happened, I think, is that it's funny because people in the chat are talking about Shirley Bassey on Tom Jones. Is that it's basically like the Streisand effect that's named after Barbara Streisand, because famously Barbara Streisand, for some reason, I can't remember why, because I think it's to do with climate stuff, is that she tried to lie and says that she didn't have a seafront property somewhere because I think she was on the climate bandwagon.
Yeah.
And she kept lying and saying, oh, I never didn't have one. And it made people go and seek it out more. So it's called the Streisand effect, because obviously you tell people that, oh, there is no Jewish mafia, there is no Zionist lobby or whatever, you know what I mean? But then people are noticing and go, hang a minute, well, I think there is definitely, especially through bodies like AIPAC and the Board of Deputies in the UK here, and Friends of the Conservative, Israel Friends of the Conservative Party, Israel Friends of the Labour Party, they seem to have their hooks quite deep into our political affairs. So by saying it doesn't exist and you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist and all of this sort of stuff, that you're an anti-Semite, whatever, people then it causes the opposite effect. It's like the Sex Pistols, where they tried to ban the Sex Pistols, they tried to ban them from radio, don't go to stuff, and people were like, well, actually, I want to go see this band now because you're making it seem like, you know what I mean? It's the Streisand effect. So that's basically what has happened. I think what's going on now is that it's containment, and it's basically trying to, I think, take over that conversation of there being that mafia that exists.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, okay, we have to release some of it. We have to, it's like containment. We have to let the people, let the plebs, as they would see it, we're going to give them some meat off the table, basically. We're going to let them have something, but then we're going to get someone, I think Tucker Carlson, who I don't personally trust. I think he is essentially a CIA operative because his dad was in the CIA. His son works with Peter Thiel, who's a CIA contractor. And I think that basically he's in charge, like Farage was, to basically take over that conversation and then eventually direct it into a establishment approved path. Well, I mean, that's what I think. I mean, he does say good things. Yes, Tucker Carlson and Nick Ferrante, they do say the correct things. I do share their stuff occasionally because the message that they are saying is true and it is waking up the masses. Yes, but I think ultimately, that they're going to steer it into a direction that will be not really radical at all. Do you get what I mean? The solution.
I do. So let me just finish the last part of the Jewish financial mafia, the Jewish political mafia, the Zionism, etc. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. I don't even think they are the major problem. There is another group of people called the Jesuits, right? And that Jesuit organization is as powerful, if not more powerful, than the Jewish lobby, right? And people are not talking about it, not seeing it. And if you look through history, they've always been there and they're still there. The people flooding the migrants, the illegals, across the southern border of the United States of America, specifically into Texas, are two groups of people. The Jewish alliance is with the Jesuit Society. Both of them people was on the other side of that border, flooding them people across. And they've done the same thing with the English Channel. If you go and look for Care for Calais website, what's the emblem that's on there? The Jesuit Society. So people are not seeing it, and then they express to you, you're a conspiracy theorist. Listen, our ancestors were not conspiracy theorists. Our history is littered with these people that are completely and utterly, they hate any religion outside of the Roman Catholic Holy Roman Empire. This is an extension of the Roman Empire. It's exactly what Putin said. We're not part of your Roman Empire. We don't want to be part of your Roman Empire. We are Orthodox Christians. Leave us alone, right?
I do think that's true. I do think that a lot of these individuals, I think that obviously the time of the Roman Empire when that was a powerful play. When it came to its end, it then scarpered to another sort of area, maybe like in Britain at the time. After and then eventually when the British Empire came along, then that fell. It then went to America. I do think that there was a change of the guard almost, by the same kind of
exactly that. What you just said is the change of guard. So people should understand the Roman Empire is still in existence, and the British Empire was an extension of that, right? Mm. And once people understand, once they'd finished with us and destroyed us, so parasites will always destroy the host. Once they finished with us, they moved and they went through the pogroms to America, and then they created America and destroyed them and attempting to destroy America. Once people understand the full history of it, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's actual fact. But China, they never teach you any of this in school. You have to go and find it from the archives of what's actually.
I hear now that the next host, parasitical host, will actually be India. I've heard a lot of, especially from Israel. I heard that their next big partners after they basically drenched, totally absorbed, sucked off the teat of America and the taxpayers. That apparently their next venture is into India, is what I've heard, because China. I think, like what you said about Russia, saying I don't want to be part of your Roman Empire. I think China is kind of like the same as well. Yeah. And I think India, you're noticing that India, I think, are going to be, because obviously their market growth is growing constantly. And I think even though obviously you see India and it's associated with like the slumdog millionaire stereotype, I think eventually that is not going to be the case. And perhaps it's going to be, at least some of it is going to be quite a wealthy kind of place in a way. I mean, I'm sure some of it is already. I don't know. I've never been to India, but it's. I think that's going to be the next kind of host. At least it's been sort of rumored that is the sort of next direction, because that is the only. How can I say it? The only power that isn't controlled by them, in the sense that Russia and China do not want that relationship, in a sense. And I think that might be the next thing. I don't know, but that's what I've heard. Anyway, but Graham, sorry to like cutting. So I've just noticed that I've got another guest here, and I didn't expect to see him. Just to quickly round up, I've seen on the thing. So you said that based on your the court case that you said that you've been involved in, I have seen here that, I don't know if you've seen this, but 4 hours ago, it's 4 hours old, there has been a article published on your court case. Do you want to share that, or do you want people?
I haven't seen the article. It was not long ago when I was handed down a judgment. So where's the article?
It's in the local Runcorn
okay.
news
no,
outlet.
I'll have a look and see what they're actually saying. But the Associated Press, who was the only people that they was misreporting on what the whole thing was about. I mean, the whole thing is about purity and freedom of election. Returning officers and their staff shouldn't be appointing members of Parliament. And if they are, which is what they're doing, there is no such thing as a red wall in England. It is just a large red cheat, and they've been allowed to get away with it for years. The only person who's ever gone into a election petition and explained the fraud to the judges was me. So at least it's out there and it's up there, and everyone should understand.
What time is your show on tonight? I'm going to put the link in. I assume it's Rumble that you still stream off, is it?
8 p.m. live. And then I'll be talking through the judgment and the cost order.
I'll put the link into your channel, and then if people want to hear your you going through it, then they're welcome to. Yeah.
Okay. No problem.
All right, then. Sorry to cut you off, Graham. Obviously, I've just seen that there's obviously another guest, and I don't have long myself on the show, so I'm gonna unfortunately have to cut short to you. But do please come on again in the future when I've seen you've got it's the case with I remember there was another case with a young chap that you were representing and
Charlie
he was
Staples.
suing the sorry
so Charlie Staples' case,
Charlie Staples, that's it, yeah,
will be it's already so the case has been the trial has been set in front of a jury. That was against the police, and that was because of the COVID lockdowns, etc., and the fact that they literally tortured him. That is December the 6th, 2026. So if you imagine how long it's took, I think it's from 2022 or maybe 23. It started. It's going all the way through to 2026.
2026, and that was that's going to be on a Wednesday, I think, on the Wednesday the 6th. Where is it? The 6th. That's a Saturday. You sure you got the right date there?
Oh,
or is it me that's got the wrong date?
I'll have to check my dates with him again, but it's definitely in December 2026.
Okay. Well, so when it's more near, I do perhaps come on again, or at least after the first hearing or whatever like that. What do you think? But Graham, yeah, thanks for coming on, mate, and I'll get you on again at some point. Yeah.
No, thanks for allowing me on, because you didn't invite me on. Our wonderful friend said, "Get on his show." I said, "All right then." All right then.
No worries, mate. Have a good one. Thanks for coming on. Take care, Graham. See you soon. See you. Bye. So on that was Graham Moore of the English Constitution Society, and obviously he's got a couple of these cases that are going on as well. So, and obviously he's at 8 p.m. later to discuss the outcome, which I've just seen. Just to be clear, it seems though that the court has dismissed it, but obviously Graham will go into that as to I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if he can appeal that stuff. I don't know, or whether he's happy with that. I don't no idea. So we'll see what it goes. But anyway, I'm gonna get on our next guest now. So I do apologise to him for the wait. So I wasn't really expecting to see him because I thought he was perhaps cancelled. That's why Graham was on the show there unexpectedly. So I'm going to add to the show Norman Mackenzie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning to you. Californian time.
I was told that you were in California, and I just thought because my last guest just unexpectedly turned up in the chat room, I thought perhaps there had been you had perhaps cancelled for whatever reason, and I wasn't expecting to see you. So Norman, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. Obviously, you must. What time is it out there in California?
It's 7:34 in the morning.
7:34 in the morning. Wow, and it's 3:34 here. So Norman, I've been told that you have an organization called OfCom Watch. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm chairman of OfCom Watch. We are a free speech campaign that is providing an oversight on our state censor, Ofcom, and we're campaigning for not reforming Ofcom, but for abolishing Ofcom. We don't see any reason to have a state censor of TV, radio, and online content. We don't have censorship of a censorship organization for newspapers, for the press in the UK, and I don't see why we don't have free speech, an American First Amendment for TV and for online content.
So just to explain to people, what exactly is Ofcom, first of all? Like what is it?
Ofcom is officially the set up by Parliament, by statute. It is the state's regulator. It's staffed largely by ex-legacy media, BBC, ITV personnel.
Someone just said that in the chat. Apparently, I've said Greg Romford says apparently a lot of the Ofcom staff are former BBC staff, which, well, is totally believable, isn't it? I mean, Ofcom. Am I right to say that Ofcom is is a state body, or does it claim to be an independent body? What is it?
No, it's set up by statute by Parliament. It's a state regulator. It's independent, or meant to be independent of government ministers, but Ofcom enforces the legislation that is passed by Parliament. So in the case of the Online Safety Act, which was passed, conceived by a so-called conservative government in 2023, Ofcom then enforces that legislation. And as we can see today, that effectively, I mean, they do it under the guise that they're protecting children's safety. But of course, 85% of the Online Safety Act is covering adult content and censoring content on the internet that is nothing to do with children, but everything to do with censoring political / conservative content. And that's why we're campaigning for its abolition. That's why I'm currently in the United States. I'm meeting with other campaigners here. I'm meeting with people in the Trump administration. I'm meeting with people later next month at the US State Department who are considering imposing sanctions on Ofcom personnel and BBC personnel. At the moment, as you know, President Trump has announced that he intends to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion, which would completely collapse the BBC if they had to pay that.
Yeah, and that's good. Do you know what's funny? I've been listening to. I happen to be listening to a BBC report, a news report, talking about that very thing, and it's quite amazing. The official BBC response from the news that Trump is looking to sue them is that their defense, and it's not really a defense at all. They're saying that, oh well, no harm was done. He still became president in the end anyway. And it's like, that's not a defense. That is still malicious behavior of that editing of that clip. Keeping in mind, at the time that clip was made, no one knew that Trump was going to be re-elected again. Not really. Obviously, things can change at any point. You don't know that. It's absolute definite that. I mean, it was an absolute definite that he was going to win in 2020. But then I think a lot of dodgy things occurred in the sense that, remember the postal voting, and suddenly this mass bulking of votes just came in for Biden, and it was. I mean, I remember I even put a bet on it, and obviously I lost that money. I think I put about 500 quid on that, which I lost, obviously. But it was uncertain. And the BBC's defense is that, oh well, no harm was done. He still became president in the end anyway. I think that's shocking. The fact that they can come on, the BBC can come on, and people like Mariana Spring, who will have BBC verify and we're the arbiters of truth. This is the pinnacle of journalistic honesty and all of this, and then they can just come out and say that to them. And I think what I find quite suspicious is that the timing of this, because obviously that Panorama video, I believe, was done quite a long time ago, really, and the lapsing of litigation process has obviously surpassed I think it's only got a year before we can do it, and it's weird that only now Trump has taken that up to do something about it. I mean, what's that about? I know it's obviously related, but I just want your opinion on it. Why do you think he's left it so long?
I think, first of all, Sean, the BBC hasn't even apologized to President Trump. They've admitted wrongdoing. They've admitted that they fabricated evidence, that they doctored a clip of President Trump, giving the misleading impression that he was advocating violence on January the 6th. But the truth is that the BBC have been caught. They knew the board of the BBC, the editorial board of the BBC, the main board of the BBC, and Ofcom themselves, they were all informed of this panorama sort of edit back in January this year. So they've known for over 10 months, and they did not take even any internal action, far less disciplinary action for the journalists or so-called journalists that were involved in this unlawful activity. So it's now that they've been caught 10 months later, and they're really rushing around trying to make every possible lame excuse for this, that it was an error. It wasn't an error. I mean, there's two very distinct issues around this whole issue of Trump and the BBC. And the first issue is that the BBC is routinely, as anyone who is centre-right, conservative politically, we all know that the BBC is ideologically captured. It's captured by the liberal left. That is their narrative. And in this case, that's an ideological bias that the BBC has. But now what we're discovering is that they're actually manufacturing evidence. They're actually creating fake news to even reinforce that ideological bias. And that's all been done on taxpayer funding, which is just outrageous. I mean, it's meant to be an impartial public broadcaster, and it clearly isn't. And I think what's going to happen as a result of this is that, number one, the BBC is exposed, but that number two, it's unsustainable as an organization. Funding has to be withdrawn. It has to be defunded. It has to be broken up into profitable, if there are and there are profitable parts of the BBC operation, but it needs to be broken up and put back into the private sector, where I'm sure, for people that want to watch it, it will flourish. But it will then, occupy a space like any other broadcaster. It can have its own political bias, but it won't be funded by the taxpayer anymore.
I personally despise the BBC. You know what I really do hate about it, and this is this really does kind of grind my gears. I'm not trying to be like some kind of male feminist white knight here or anything, but the number one, this is what I really can't. I try not to swear or anything. I can't stand the BBC for many reasons, right? But one of them in particular is one that a lot of people don't know about, is that the number one conviction rate in this country for women over the age of 40 is the BBC license. Is not having the BBC license. So what the BBC license, what do you call them? What are they called? The BBC license inspectors. What they are trained to do, no doubt, when they are being trained to do these jobs, is that they are essentially trained to prey on women, right? Especially elderly women. Because elderly women, especially, this is just normal biology, is that obviously men are more disagreeable compared to women who are agreeable. So whereas men are more likely, like I've done in the past, if a BBC inspector turns up at your door, or if you get a letter, you could simply tear it up and throw it away, or the inspector, you just tell them to F off and that's it, and close the door. The women, especially the Dorothys, the Ethels, the elderly women, the boomer kind of generation women who have been taught to respect or respect authority and all of this, is that they will basically kowtow to the BBC license inspector, and the BBC license inspector will obviously lie. They're like bailiffs. They lie about the powers that they have. That that there's some kind of they're almost on par with police powers and all of that, which is totally untrue. And they will basically invite them in, and then they will be caught out. And then essentially these mostly male TV license inspectors prey on these elderly women, and then eventually get probably no doubt some kind of commission from it and all of that. And they basically punish these women. And I think that is such a scummy thing to do, that they prey on these women. And it makes me laugh then, because then the BBC itself will then virtue signal and say, we believe in more female representation. Women's rights. Yes. All of this. And they'll virtue signal about that. And then many people don't know it's the #1 conviction rate in the UK for women over the age of 40. And I think that is a really scummy thing. And that's why it is just simply, like you say, go into like a model where if you want to watch it, like any streaming service, and if you want to watch it, you pay for it simply. Not this sort of nonsense where oh, you have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. And if you're watching live TV, you have to pay for it and all of that. Because the TV obviously will come with all of these terrestrial channels. It will come with, so it's just an easily available thing. And then if you're caught out, then you obviously get penalized for it, even though it's like, well, I didn't really ask for this. Like, it just sort of came along with the TV. So I think it's a very, very, very disgusting thing that the BBC does. So if this was to happen, I personally, honestly, I don't think, I don't know. I mean, there's been these promises made in the past, like with Boris Johnson, that the Royal Charter is going to be basically, it's not going to be renewed and all this, and it just continues. And I think that basically the BBC is essentially the mouthpiece of the state, and I think it's useful to any government when it's their turn to be the government, whether it's the Labour or the Conservative Party, and it's useful to them in some way. But will it go away? I don't know. But what with your, so basically Ofcom. So let's just follow. So obviously the BBC, we know about the BBC, total degenerate kind of organization, and then obviously there's Ofcom, which is supposedly this, this is what makes me laugh. The state creates it, and then to many people it seems, but we have this watchdog society that's watching the BBC, and therefore everything's lovely and all of that. And like someone said in the chat and yourself, is that many of the people who work for Ofcom, they're usually ex-BBC employees. And I remember I went to an Ofcom building in Gloucestershire, and the Ofcom building was literally within the BBC building, or next to the BBC building. So these staff of Ofcom, so keeping in mind Ofcom are meant to be the watchdog of these people. They're in the same building. They're talking to each other. They're friends. They're probably having lunch together and all of this. And there's no real, there isn't really a scrutiny about it. It's all just pretense to make you think that we live in this fair, democratic, whatever, liberal democracy where, we have this thing. So then that's Ofcom. So now there's another, now with your thing, there's another thing, the OfCom Watch. So it's who watches the watchers? Well, you're watching the watchers of OfCom Watch. So
I mean, Ofcom, as you rightly comment, it's a revolving door. It basically is personnel from the BBC, leaving the BBC or ITV or Sky News and walking straight into cushy, well-paid, taxpayer-funded jobs at Ofcom.
Will there be a OfCom Watch, will there eventually, and then an Ofcom Watch, and then it'll just go on?
Well, no one needs to watch us because we're not funded by taxpayer funds. We're privately funded and by donations from the public for people that probably have been persecuted by the BBC. But we are campaigning and taking Ofcom and the BBC to the High Court for the fact that they're not fit for purpose. The BBC is clearly an anachronism. You don't really need in the internet age with huge diversity and choice in internet and media. We don't need a public sector broadcaster, and we certainly don't need a broadcaster that is curating a narrative that is clearly anti-British, that's anti sort of democratic, and the BBC has now been exposed, and hopefully this begins the process of breaking up the BBC, and ultimately, hopefully, our intention is to make sure that Ofcom is abolished, and that we have, as we have here in the United States, a First Amendment where there's absolute free speech.
So, yes, I agree. I agree with one of the commenters there that says the BBC will be gone when the boomers pass. I think that's actually very true. I think things are going to change once that boomer generation eventually naturally departs. And I think definitely it's definitely going to be a different kind of plane once they're gone. But I was going to so obviously you're being funded not by taxpayers' money but by donations. But what can you do? Because obviously Ofcom have certain, as much as we know that they won't use them because it's all in the same club essentially with ex-BBC, ex-ITV, all that, etc. employees essentially crossing the lobby. What can you do about it? What powers are OfCom Watch going to have if it's not really an official body? What can you do?
Well, we are a campaign, and our main focus at the moment is exposing the Online Safety Act. Ofcom, as well as the Labour government, are disguising the fact of their ability to censor content on the internet, to censor commentators, individuals, and members of the public using the Online Safety Act, using the guise of they're protecting children, sexual sort of exploitation of children. But what we have discovered is that over 85% of the censorship that now occurs under the Online Safety Act is actually censoring, political content of adults. It's not actually censoring content that could be deemed as child sexual exploitation. So that's the first thing. Plus, it's also censoring American technology companies and American citizens, and a British organization telling American technology companies and American citizens what they can and cannot say is clearly ridiculous. It's totally absurd. Ofcom are sending letters to American technology companies, threatening them with multi-million-pound fines and jail time if they don't adapt or change the content of their whatever their platform internet platform is, and that's clearly against the First Amendment. It's clearly absurd, and the American administration are in the process, as I've seen a draft of new American legislation that's going to be introduced, which will actually impose fines on Ofcom if they are trying to threaten American technology companies. And the Americans will actually impose sanctions against Ofcom. I think it'll begin with travel sanctions against Ofcom personnel, so they won't be able to travel to the United States. But ultimately, the US government will be fining Ofcom and the British government for threatening American citizens' First Amendment rights. So it's going to be a real war, and we're working with the Americans to make sure that they do sanction Ofcom, so they know who the personnel are within the offices of Ofcom that are planning the censorship.
Is Ofcom Watch essentially really for the benefit of America, or does it? I mean, what do you do in the UK?
Oh no, we're a UK organisation. I'm just visiting the United States at the moment to work with the equivalent organisations of ours in the UK to sort of exchange information with them, give them a little bit more visibility of exactly what Ofcom is planning, who is doing it within the UK government, that are actually planning that censorship, and working with our American allies. I mean, Britain and the United States are allies, but under the Labour government, they are breaking that relationship, and they are absolutely restricting free speech, not just in the UK, but attempting to restrict free speech in the United States.
Okay. It reminds me of remember when RT was basically censored from the UK here, and then Putin basically went, "Oh, is RT restricted in the UK? Well, I guess we're going to kick out all the BBC people then in Russia here." And I think did he end up doing that? I can't actually remember if he ended up actually doing that or not. But it sounds quite similar to that. So are you basically sort of wanting a similar kind of, if he did do that, are you wanting that basically all of the Ofcom personnel could be basically just booted out of America, essentially?
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is that, you think that censorship is only happening in isolated instances, but it's routinely happening every hour of every day in the UK. Content that you are reading, whether it's a post on X or whether it's digital content on YouTube, it is being routinely censored in the UK using legislation like the Online Safety Act. And Ofcom is one of many, many organizations in the UK that is actually censoring content. I mean, during the European elections back in 2024, there was something in the region of 35,000 YouTube videos that were removed or censored under the European Digital Services Act, which is the equivalent of the UK Online Services Act. And that was clear electoral interference in the EU elections, and that was state-sanctioned censorship. And we have even worse censorship, but it's not being exposed to the extent that it is. And the Americans now are aware of that censorship because it's affecting their citizens and their technology companies, and they're not going to stand for it. They're going to take action. And when it involves the president himself being the victim of fake news, then it's getting worldwide coverage. And this is embarrassing for the BBC. It's embarrassing for Ofcom, and we are doing everything we possibly can. That's why I'm in the United States, to make sure that the Americans do take action, because in taking action against Ofcom and the BBC, the Americans are going to be helping ordinary British citizens, because we'll be able to hopefully restore our freedom of speech in the UK by exposing this censorship.
Well, I mean, it seems, well, I wish you luck on that, because obviously that sounds like a bit of a challenging step there. I just got your Twitter page up here, your X account. I'm going to put it in the chat there, Norman.
Thanks,
I want to thank you,
Sean.
and also thank you for coming on. Obviously, I know it's early in the morning and you've probably gotten up a bit early. I'll put it in the chat there if people want to follow you on X there. So thank you for coming on the show and obviously getting up early. And it's quite interesting what you're talking about. But I hope it will succeed for you.
No, fine. I really appreciate that. Thank you, all of your viewers. Please click and follow us on X, on Twitter, and look at the links. We've launched a campaign to fund our legal action against the BBC and against Ofcom. So if people can make donations there, then that will help pay our legal costs. So yeah, thank you.
No worries, Norman. Well, thank you again, man, and have a good afternoon, or good morning, I should say.
Exactly. Thanks very much, Sean.
Take care. See ya. Bye. That was Norman McKenzie, guys, of OfCom Watch. So yeah, we'll see what can be done there. There's a will Trump sue the BBC? I don't know, man. It's quite funny how it's been left that long, though. I mean, like the belief is, especially from David Clues of UNM, and I think I do agree with it too, is that is possibly being. I mean, obviously the the director of the BBC, I can't remember his name now. He resigned, as well as a few others, and it's more so believed that occurred because of their, again, funny, I marked the ends on my feed. That's really happened because of their disloyal, or at least not loyal enough, commitment to the state of Israel, at least on their coverage, basically not becoming Israel TV and just becoming a propaganda machine. And they're using that Trump thing as a as a reason to punish him in a way. Like they dug it up. Again, it's like blackmail, and they probably had that. They sat on that for a while, and they thought, right, this guy, he's not really on our side. He's not zogged up enough. Basically, we need to punish him, and then they've just released that. I don't know. I could believe it. I mean, the fact that that's been around for ages, and then all of a sudden that's a thing. So I don't know, but we'll see. Look, if Trump was to do that and it brought down the BBC, then fine. But to be honest with you, I mean, Trump kind of has become part of that swamp, hasn't he? And that swamp is transnational. It doesn't just mean in America. It's worldwide, isn't it? And I think that the BBC is part of that swamp, that establishment swamp. Is he going to do anything? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Anyway, so let's just get into other things. So I want to talk about Kash Patel, because obviously this has happened last night. So Kash Patel was brought in front of the congressional committee to talk about the Epstein files. And let's just first of all, let's just see what Kash Patel's what he was saying. This is the classic meme of what is it? How it's going now, sort of thing. Kash Patel literally told us he would release the Epstein Black Book on day one. Politicians, celebrities, and powerful figures participated in the child sex trafficking ring, and we are about to definitely find out who. The panic in DC this week must be palpable. So let's listen to what was said. Let's just see what he was saying.
Will you? Well, the Epstein Black Book, like on day one.
On day one, roll out the Black Book.
Day one.
So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
Well, the Epstein Black Book, like on day one.
On day one?
All right, okay.
Roll out the Black
Day
Book.
one, right, okay. Okay, so let's see how it's going. So, Thomas Massey, this is last night. Thomas Massey just questioned Kash Patel on Epstein. See, like there's a lot of people who still have faith in Trump, and I don't. I mean, I haven't had faith in Trump for years, but it does amaze me that people think that they can still rely on Trump. I mean, the Epstein stuff is just the ultimate betrayal. Like I just don't. I can't see. There are people, even some people in the UNN chat, for example, that I know it's all unprecedented, but I talk about the UNN on Telegram and all of that, is that they still believe in Trump, some of them. And that it's become like the Nick Fuentes stuff, it's become a bit of a cult, you see. And their leader can't be challenged. So this is what happened. Thomas Massey just questioned Kash Patel on Epstein. Let's listen to what was said.
Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007, and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to the Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to the Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people? And have you seen these 302 documents?
Just listen to the response.
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
Oh, okay. We'll just trust the FBI then. Okay, Cash, we'll just trust them then. They're the same people who have covered this up for years that he's taken over. And he said, oh, they're all just going to be released on day one. He's just going to take the word of these corrupt crony FBI agents and go, well, they didn't say there was any.
Sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names.
I said,
I named one today.
I said, we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move
right there
on here. Were you present?
So what I should have played was this is what he said the previous day. Okay, he said 40 minors gave sworn testimonies that they've been raped and trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. Kash Patel under oath. There is no credible information, quote, there is no credible information that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked minors. FBI Kash Patel needs to be charged with perjury. So this is what he said. So obviously Thomas Massie has named a bunch of people that we know are in the Epstein files, right? And are in other separate FBI files as well. But what Kash Patel has said,
there's no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Okay.
There's no credible information. None.
No. So there is a bit of a contradiction there. Kash Patel needs to resign or be fired. This is simply atrocious. On September 16th, he testified and lied to Congress when he said Epstein trafficked to no one, that the FBI has no names of additional perpetrators. He is covering this up. Massie handled this perfectly. Fire him. So unrelated, I'm sure it's unrelated. This is Kash Patel's girlfriend. Kash Patel's girlfriend is 26 years old. Justine, this is again yesterday, Kash Patel's girlfriend becomes first to live separately and given FBI security detail. Definitely not something a Mossad honeypot would get. So if people don't know this woman's history, she was in the IDF. Not only was she in the Israel Defense Force, but she was also in the intelligence wing of the IDF. She is, I think, about 20 years his senior. Quite an attractive girl. I wouldn't say Kash Patel was attractive, but, you know, whatever. People have different tastes, I suppose. This, apparently, I didn't even notice about her. She's also a country and western singer or something. Country music sensation Alexis Wilkins has reportedly been assigned her own FBI SWAT team, a protection detail funded by the US taxpayers and arranged by her boyfriend, FBI Director Kash Patel. The agents protecting Wilkins are drawn from the Bureau's Nashville SWAT unit, trained to handle major incidents like mass shootings and terrorist attacks. Wilkins is neither Patel's spouse nor living with him. She does not even reside in the same city as Kash Patel. That's a bit weird, isn't it? The whole thing's a bit weird. You could say, possibly, that this woman is Kash Patel's handler. And probably, one could say, like how I mean, it's all a bit weird, isn't it? Because this is obviously a Jewish lady. Keir Starmer's wife is a Jewish lady. David Lammy's wife is a Jewish lady. You have, what's his name? That's probably going to be the next conservative leader. What's his name again, guys? I'll get his name in the chat there. What's his name? Someone quickly say it in the chat. The new probable Tory leader. His wife or girlfriend is also a Jewish lady. You could say that perhaps that Robert Jenrick, thank you, Greg Romford, yep, but with a J, I believe though, that these individuals are perhaps compromised, and whatever dirt that this particular IDF former IDF intelligence operative has on Patel, who has probably tricked him, obviously used her, like Poison Ivy, used her looks to basically get whatever. Or maybe he's just a total cuck. He does look like a bit of a cuck, actually. That he'll do anything for an attractive woman, but perhaps in the past he's not been too successful. I don't know. Let's listen to what I've not heard. Let's listen to her music. Let's see what, hopefully won't get a strike.
People were proud of the USA, American pride, American made, feels and steals.
This is what I say, right? You see, look, she's wearing a US flag. You notice that all of these people, right, who really do overbear themselves in what would be seen as a patriot person, the patriot stuff, where they always have to have a flag with them, because in my opinion, they are overcompensating for something that they are not. They are in fact a traitor, because this individual has also served. I mean, apparently she's American. She's a dual citizen. She has American citizenry, but she also has Israeli citizenry, and she has not served the United States Army, to my knowledge, but she has served the Jewish army, the Israeli army, because she's obviously Jewish as well. So, talking about American pride, just when I was on the home feed here, and it said about Mark Levin, there he is. Look, conservative principles have to be your North Star. Well, is it conservative principles or is it Zionist principles? As in Israel first, which seems to be what Mark Levin constantly goes on about. See, you have to be quite careful about who you're getting behind, because these people will lead you down a path where it's not the thing you think it is on the tin. A lot of these patriots, a lot of the patriot people, they're following people who do not have the interests of the host nation as their first priority. Anyway, guys, I think I'm going to, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's been thrown under the bus as well by Trump. Which is funny, really, because this is how you know Trump is compromised by the Israel lobby. Because whereas you can say with Thomas Massey, where he's always kind of gone against the Republican Inc. wing, right, the neocon Republican wing, he's obviously he's a constitutionalist. He's more of an American patriot than any of these other people, more than Trump especially. Again, Trump wraps himself famously. You see Trump hugging an American flag and all of that when he went up on stage. Thomas Massey doesn't need to do that stuff. He's more of a patriot than any of these people combined, because the libertarian values, the constitutional values, are really the American first values. So you can see, obviously, why Trump hates Thomas Massey, because he genuinely is America first, right? But with Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's quite funny because she has always been a loyal lapdog to Trump and MAGA. And you can't call Taylor Greene the same as Thomas Massey. Yes, they talk about the same stuff, but they definitely come from it from different angles and different approaches. And because simply Marjorie Taylor Greene has been talking about the lobby, right, the Israeli lobby, she is now being thrown under the bus because really Trump's loyalty really lays with Israel. I mean, Mark Levin famously said that he was Israel's first ever. What did he say? He said Israel. What did Mark Levin say? Let's get the quote up. He said, let's see, Mark. What was the thing he said? Mark Levin. Trump is America's first Jewish president, wasn't it? He said. Let's see it. It was Mark Levin that said it, didn't he? Let's see. Let's see, and I'm going to go after this, guys. Yeah, he said, obviously the video's not at hand, but I do remember it. Conservative radio talk shows, Mark Levin referred to President Trump as, quote, the first Jewish president of the United States in 2019. I mean, you hear rumors that did Trump convert to Judaism, but I don't think he converted to Judaism because he's not religious at all. It's not one religious bone in his body, Trump. But I think perhaps you could argue that the non-religious wing of Judaism, aka Freemasonry, he's probably joined, or he wasn't already a member in. That's probably more what he said. Probably more what he meant, what the conspiracy says about him. But yeah, so it's funny that now they've gone after her because you can't. Again, she's been loyal to MAGA, being loyal to Trump since she got into Congress in the first place. So trying to basically square that circle and trying to explain that is it's not really doable, is it? Let's new Marjorie Taylor Greene rips President Trump for calling her a traitor as she stands with Epstein victims, saying that the real fight will start after the files are released. Quote, I was called a traitor by a man I fought for 6 years for. I gave him my loyalty for free. He called me a traitor for standing for these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. Absolutely. You can apply that to Tommy Robinson. You can apply that to all of those Tommy bottom feeding YouTube that have all been out to Israel recently, licking the wall and all of that. The Leo curses, the Liam Tufts, all of those individuals.
I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me. And I want to tell you that this only became possible today because the American people whom we serve as representatives here in Congress demanded that this vote happen, and they put more pressure on every single elected politician in this city than has ever been put on them. And today you are going to see probably a unanimous vote in the House to release the Epstein files. But the fight, the real fight, will happen after that.
Wow. Okay, well, on that note, I'm going to head off, guys. It's been way over my time. So thank you all for watching. I'm back. I'm personally, but obviously, Unprecedented TV is on every day with various other presenters. But I personally am back on tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. with Unity News Network on UNN's Rumble and UNN's D Live, as well as this Delivering Liberty YouTube channel. So please do tune in for that. Thank you all for watching, guys, and have a fantastic evening. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.